is Heather, and today I'm going to show you how to paint this sunset kitty painting. To paint this sunset kitty painting, first you'll need a canvas. This size is the 16 by 20. Today I'm going to be using the 11 by 14 canvas. And you'll also need some paints. So you'll need black and white. I have Blick Acrylic Black from Dick Blick, and I have the Liquitex Basics White. You'll also need red, orange, and yellow. My red is a Blick Acrylic Bright Red. And then my orange and my yellow are Liquitex Basics. I have cadmium orange hue and cadmium yellow medium hue. Lastly, you'll need green. I have light green here from Premier Acrylic Colors. You'll need a plate to put your paints on, a piece of white chalk to sketch out the drawing of the kitty on the branch, and then you'll also need some brushes. These are the 4 brushes that I usually use for my paintings. We have the 1-inch flat brush, a 3/8 of an inch flat brush, a number 5 round, and then a 0 round, which is just a really skinny tiny brush for details. Then you'll need a paper towel to dry your brush, and then a water source. So now that we have all of our supplies, let's get started. The first step to creating our sunset kitty painting will be to put the sun in there. So we're going to start with the yellow, and then I'm going to get a little bit of white too. And you can start with your big round brush, the number 5, and first just get it wet and then dry it gently on your paper towel so the bristles come together. And go ahead and mix some of the yellow with the white. So you're going to pull some yellow out and pull some white out. You don't want to mix it in the middle of the paint because you want to be able to see the end result. So we're just going to have kind of a pale yellow here. And then we want to figure out where our sun is going to be. So you can go down, I mean, it doesn't really matter too much how far you go down. This is an 11 by 14 canvas that I'll probably do maybe about the height of my hand going this way. And I'm just going to make a little mark. So that's where the top of my sun will be. Or maybe I'll go a little bit higher than that. Maybe I'll do 4 fingers down. Yeah, that's a little bit better. And then from there, we want to make sure that our sun is just centered. So we want to make sure we go the same distance from the left and from the right. So for example, I could do this width of my hand here. And you don't want to do it exactly to the left of this dot because we're going to have a curve. So you want to go down here, almost like you're making a diamond. And then I'll do this. So that way it's going to be perfectly centered in the canvas. Then I'll get some more of my yellow and white, and I'll just connect those. And if you do kind of mess up a little bit, it's not a big deal actually, because we're going to be going over it with the orange and the red anyways. So like, even if I don't want to go as far as this mark right now, that's okay, because I'm just going to end up painting over it anyways. So these are just guidelines, remember that, and you can go ahead and make your circle. And then I'm going to rinse this brush and dry it, and then I'm going to fill in my circle. And I do like to make this kind of swirly, so when I grab my yellow and white, I'm going to get like some yellow and some white and leave it kind of swirly so it's not a perfect solid color. And then I'll just fill in, and I want my brush strokes to go around with the circle. And the way you want to do this is you don't just move your brush like this. You want to kind of twirl your brush around so that you're always using like the big flat part of the brush. So you're kind of twirling it. And you could just, you know, fill in the center like that. But then when you're doing like the outside, you want to go with the circle. And you can also just go right into the white if you want to add some little kind of white streaks. Or if yours is pretty light looking already, you can go right into the yellow and you can add some yellow. So it kind of just depends on your painting. You don't want the paint to be too thick though, because you want it to be able to dry. Okay, and then this is the kind of thing where you don't want to mess with it too much, because the more you brush over it, the more it's going to blend. And if you want it to look nice and swirly, you're going to have to like not blend it very much. All right, so there's my circle. Now I'm going to rinse my brush and dry it gently on my paper towel. And now we're going to start the rest of the sky. We're going to use the red. So I'm going to grab my plate and I'm going to grab some red. And I'm going to use my big flat brush. So I'll get some red. I'm not getting my brush wet first, I'm just going right into the red. And then the first thing I'm going to do is make the line for the ground. And when you make the line for the ground, you're going to be above where the ground is. So if you want the ground to go, say, up to here, then you want to start the red right above it. And I like to do just like a little sideways kind of an S shape, like a very gentle S shape. And then you can go ahead and add more red to kind of fill that in. And you want to make sure you're doing long strokes all the way from one side of the canvas to the other. You don't want to stop in the middle, or you don't want to start like here, because you're going to get these marks. So instead you want to start like on the outside of the canvas and go all the way across. So you can start here when you're applying the paint, but then when you're smoothing it out, you want to go all the way. So I'm just bringing this up a little bit, and then we're going to start going around. So I'm going to take my red and I'm going to curve this, and then I want to curve this, because we want to start going around the sun. You don't want to go too far with the red because it is a very dark and strong color, and we want to be able to have some orange in here. But the really good thing is after you apply the red, if you just keep brushing as you run out of paint, then that's going to be really nice, because you want to have kind of a feathered effect like this, because that's going to help you blend it really nice. Just having that nice little feather effect. So go ahead and do some of these strokes, but you want to make sure that you like ran out of paint in your brush. So this way we're just kind of planning how our circle is going to be. And then once you kind of have that down all nice and feathery, you can get some more red, and then you want to just kind of fill in the corners. And again, you want to go like off the canvas. So you don't want to like start here, you want to go from outside the canvas to outside the canvas. And I'm using very little paint right now. So you don't want to use a lot of paint, because we want to be able to have orange and have the orange show up. So just kind of like that. And then remember, you can always add more red, so don't feel like you need to add more red. All right, so now we can grab our orange. And you don't need to rinse your brush, just go right into the orange. And I'm just grabbing some orange, and I'm just going to go right over where the red meets the canvas. That way we can blend it very nicely. And this is totally up to you how much orange you want to put, because see, you can pull the orange down so that you have kind of more of an orangey red near the bottom. because that looks really cool too. Right now we're just going right along this kind of edge here. And then now, once we have that done and we have this white part here, we kind of want to just do a little stroke. So I'm just going to have a little bit of paint on my brush, and I'm just going to do some small strokes like this, very lightly. That's how we'll get that nice streaky look. And you can kind of turn your brush so you can use your the flat part of the brush here so that you get a skinny line. And then kind of rotate your brush so you get that skinny line around the sun. And now we can add in our yellow. So we already have our yellow out from before, and I'm going to get more of like just the yellow, but you can get a little bit of white in it too. And now I'm going to do some little streaks like this. Just like we were doing with the orange, I'm kind of rotating my brush, and you can even bring some into the red part too. You know, just kind of have fun with it, see what kind of combinations you can make with the orange and the red and the yellow. And then once you get like a lot of these strokes down, if you have any kind of like tall paint, like where it's kind of built up, you can just very lightly brush over it like this. Okay. So we're just kind of building up around the sun here. Not in a hurry. Just take your time. You can add some yellow out here. And you want to go very careful around the sun, so you can just kind of curve your brush around it. If this does seem to be a little bit difficult for you, you can always switch to your bigger round brush to go around it. All right, so now you can look at your painting, and like I do feel like I have a lot more yellow up here and not so much down here, so I'll add a little more. But I am going to mix a little bit of white with the yellow just because just yellow isn't going to show up all that much. So I'll just kind of fill in down here just to kind of make the circle a little more symmetrical. That's a little bit better. And then maybe I'll just kind of clean up around this edge here. So I'll get a little bit of orange and a little bit of yellow, just so that I can kind of go right around this edge here. You don't want too much paint. You don't want to cover up all your nice streaks that you made, but just kind of making a nice clean edge. All right, there we go. So the next step is that we can go ahead and do our edges to match. So we can just do just red around the edges. So we don't actually need to rinse our brush. Just wipe the extra paint off on your paper towel. And then you can get your red and go ahead and fill in those edges. Oh, and I like to do short little strokes from the back of the canvas to the front. This way you won't get it on the front of the canvas because you're just going right off the canvas like this. If you go this way, then your bristles might come down and cover the front and mess up your pretty design. And then after you brush all of your paint on this way, you can always take your brush and just very gently go across if you want your brush strokes to go left to right. Alright, so now that we're done with the whole sky, I'm going to rinse my brush and I'm going to go wash it in the sink so that I don't just totally get my water all dirty and have to change it. Our next step is going to be the green grass. So I'm going to grab my green, and then I'm also going to need white, so I'm putting it right here next to my white, but you could also get more white if you need it. And for this part, I'm going to get some green and get some white on my brush at the same time, and you want it to be kind of swirly like this. And then I'm just going to go all the way across like this. I like to paint the stroke parallel to the ground that you made right here. So you want to keep going in that kind of S shape. Then you can add some of the darker green, so just get the green. And I love for this to look like very uneven and brush strokey. I just think it looks really cool and like artsy. To get this nice edge here, you can turn your brush this way so that you have a nice solid edge here, and you go right across. Nice and slow, all the way, like that. And then just kind of blend underneath it. So I'll get some more green, because this is looking really light. And then once you get to the bottom edge of the canvas, you'll just have to go straight across. You won't be able to do that S shape. And then another neat thing is that you can add some yellow in too, and that looks really cool. So my yellow has all this orange in it, so I'm going to get some new yellow. And then I'm just going to, I'll just dip like a corner into the yellow, because that way I can add some like little streaks, because it'll only be as thick as, you know, how much I put right there. We can also do a little bit of white with the yellow. It'll show up a little better with that too. So, you know, just kind of experiment with it, have fun. There's no right or wrong. All right, I'm pretty happy with that. So now we can go ahead and do our edges to match. So I'll just do it the same way as I did the other ones, and I'll just use the green, and I'll do short little strokes from the back to the front. And then once I have all the paint on there, I can do a long stroke across, just blending it and making it kind of match the front. And then for the sides, if you want, you can somewhat kind of match the front. Of course, it doesn't have to be exact because it's just the sides, like people aren't really going to see it. But you can just get like a little bit of white and a little bit of green on your brush, so that way you can do strokes like this, where they look kind of dark and light, and it'll kind of match the front. Don't mess around with it too much though, because again, it doesn't need to match exactly, just kind of roughly. I'm going to flip it around and do the last edge. Alright, so there's our background, and I'm going to go wash my brush in the sink, and then I'll be back and we can start the kitty cat. Now that we have our background done, we can go ahead and sketch out the kitty cat. So go ahead and grab your white chalk, and then I'm going to go hard with the chalk, but you should go very lightly. I'm just going to try to go darker with it so you can see it on the camera, but you should definitely go lightly, because if you go too hard, then you might not be able to wipe it off after the paint dries if you have any chalk showing. So we're going to start by doing the kitty cat, and we want his head to be overlapping the sun and then just have like part of his body. So you can start by doing the head, and I'm going to make a circle right here. And then I'm going to do his body. So for the circle for the head, and then the body is going to be just like an upside down letter U, like that. You can add 2 little triangles for the ears, which I like to start from the edge of the circle head and just go straight up, and then the other edge and go straight up, and then just pull in and pull in. After that, we can just connect the bottom, so that's going to be like the bottom of his body. And then we can do the branch. So for the branch, we can go all the way across to the left, and I like to go down a little bit, and then to the right we're going to go up a little bit. Then we can add the tail. So for the tail, we're going to do kind of like a backwards letter S. So we're going to go this way and then this way. Or you could always do the tail differently, of course. So this is just how I'm doing it. That's a little big, actually. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller, maybe like that. And then we're going to kind of curl it in. Then the other thing is that we can add a few little smaller branches. So I'm just going to make like a smaller branch here, which, by the way, when you do your branches, you want to do kind of like in like the angle will be like kind of a 45-degree angle, or like if you were making a letter Y but sideways. So you don't want to have your branches come out this way like at a 90-degree angle. You want it to be kind of more like this kind of an angle, so that you have more of like a triangle here. And then I'll just do like a couple, like maybe here and here. And we want to stagger our branches. I have a video on this too, which I'll link up at the top. But basically, like, you want to stagger them, so you don't want them coming out of the same spot. You want to have like one coming out here and then move up and have one coming out there. So we can add more branches later, but that's just what we'll do for now. Then I'm going to set my chalk aside, and I will get some black paint. And I'm going to grab my number 5, my bigger round brush, and I'll get it wet and then dry it gently on my paper towel. And then I'm just going to start with my outlines first. So I'll just take the black and I'll outline this head. And if you find that your paint is a little too dry and like you get a lot of kind of like skipping like this, where there's a lot of those little holes, then you just need your brush to be more wet. So you can just dip your brush in the water, dry it on the paper towel, and then get some paint. And then that should work a lot better. And I'll go right over the tail. And remember, the chalk is just a guide. So like if I decide I want the tail to be smaller than what I drew, like that's okay. That's why we go very lightly with the chalk, because later we will rub it off. We don't want to rub it off yet, because then we might accidentally rub the wet paint and that would mess up our painting. Alright, so now we can go ahead and fill in the kitty cat. And then another thing we can do, if you just want kind of a more like elegant looking kitty cat, you can just, instead of having this hard corner here, just kind of connect it like that. So it's kind of more of like a pear shape. And then you can also, you know, if you want to make the cat's behind a little bit bigger, and then you can just bring these sides out a little bit more. So it's kind of up to you and how you want your kitty cat to look. Kind of make sure these ears are symmetrical. And then we can also thicken the tail. And try to make sure that you're holding the brush perpendicular to the canvas. Then you'll get much better lines that way as opposed to holding it like sideways like this. And now we can go over our tree branch. So first we're just going to go right over it just like in a single line. And you can rotate your canvas too if that helps. I know it helps a lot of times for me. And right now we're just focusing on going right over the branch, just a single line. We're not really worrying about the thickness of the branch yet. So for now, just make sure you just get this initial line down just so we have like the initial structure of the branch, like his bones. And then we will worry about the thickness later. So now that we have the initial lines down for the branch, we can go ahead and make things thicker. We want it to be thicker on the left side because that's where it's coming out of the tree. And then also for the smaller branches, we want it to be thicker as it comes out of the main branch. So we want it to be thicker and then get thin. And you can also add a little bit of wobbliness to the branch just to make it look a little more natural. So you don't want to have like perfectly straight sides. I mean, you can, but you know, I guess it just kind of depends on what kind of look you're going for. So I'm going to make it a lot thicker on the left here. And then just make it get thinner as it goes out. And now I'll go ahead and do the smaller branches and make them thicker where they're coming out of the main branch and then thinner towards the ends. Also, if you want to switch to your tiny brush to do like the very ends of the branches, you can do that too. That can be very helpful. And now that I've finished those, I'm going to rinse this bigger brush and dry it gently on my paper towel. And then I'm going to grab my tiny brush and I'll get it wet and then dry it. And now we can do some smaller branches coming off of our little sub branches here. So again, you want to do it in that same kind of like a 45-degree angle, kind of like the letter Y, and staggering. So if I put one down here, then I don't want to have one coming out right here. I want to move up and then have one coming out on this side. And then of course, just like with the other ones, you want to make them get smaller as you go towards the end of the branch. And you can do this as many times as you want, just branching out your branches. So like if you wanted, you could do smaller branches coming off of this little branch. You know, you just, as much as you want. And after that, now we can add the leaves. So for the leaves, we're going to use the same brush, get some black, and then I like to do kind of like the shape of a football or like the shape of an eye, like a person's eye. And I do the outline, and then I'm going to fill it in. And I also like to have like 1 or 2 at the end of each branch. So since I have 1 at the end of this one, then I'll do 2 at the end of this other one. And you can also do some leaves kind of in the middle of a branch. So like in the middle of here, I'll do a little leaf. And we can do some on the main branch. So I kind of like to have them like in a V. So I could even make a V like this, and then that'll be like my little guideline. When you're done with that, you can rinse your brush and dry it on your paper towel. And then when you're all done, the last step would be to wipe off the chalk. You do have to be very careful when you do this because the painting needs to be completely dry. I usually wait until the next day to do this, but just for the video, I'll just do it now. But if you wait until the next day, then you know it's completely dry. And I like to use a wet paper towel to wipe it off when the canvas is completely dry. So if you just use your finger, you know, you might not get it off all the way. Like there's still some white here. So here's my wet paper towel, and I'm just going to wipe right over the chalk to get it off. All right, so there is our Sunset Kitty painting. I hope you had fun painting along with me, and I hope you learned some new things. Feel free to send me an email if you want to send me a picture of your kitty cat painting. Please comment if you have any questions, and hope to see you next time. Bye!